And the true story was this was a yeshiva boy from America who was walking back to his yeshiva from the Kotel and was attacked by a mob of Palestinian terrorists. And they were beating him up. And this Israeli soldier, who, by the way, was a non-Jewish Israeli soldier, he was Druze, he was holding a stick, yelling at the Palestinians, protecting this Jewish boy. And it was told in such a backward, just the a complete opposite.
Welcome back, everybody, to part two with Dov Lipman. Let's get right back into it. All right, so part one was insane stories from the Knesset. I would love to visit that one day. See what goes on there with my eyes.
Well, post-corona, I'll give you guys a tour.
Awesome, sounds good. So you are a former Knesset member, meaning you are no longer a Knesset member. Today you do something else. You work for Honest Reporting.
Yeah, so when I left the Knesset, you have to figure out, so what am I going to do now? I had the platform as a former member of Knesset, and I'm free from all the craziness of politics. And one of the things I started focusing on was continuing the work on the Haredim and helping the Haredim that want to be integrated into Israeli society, but also Israel advocacy and telling Israel's story. And I started learning along the way that most people out there in the world have no opinion about Israel. There's 10% that are super anti-Israel there, and it's also anti-Semitic. There's 10% who are very much with Israel, and then there's middle 80% that they're just thinking about what they're having for supper tonight and what they're watching on reality TV, and they're not really thinking about Israel, don't know anything. But if they see a little soundbite here which says, "Ooh, Israel bombs Gaza," or they get these little sound bites and little pictures, that forms their entire picture about Israel. So the media has a real important role in this process, and they have a role in the misinformation that's out there. So honest reporting was actually started uh, almost 20 years ago. There was a story of a New York Times picture. It had a picture of an Israeli soldier holding his stick above a young person who was filled with blood all over their face. And it said, "Israeli soldier tormenting Palestinian child." And the true story was this was a yeshiva boy from America who was walking back to his yeshiva from the Kotel and was attacked by a mob of Palestinian terrorists. And they were beating him up. And this Israeli soldier, who, by the way, was a non-Jewish Israeli soldier, he was Druze, he was holding a stick, yelling at the Palestinians, protecting this Jewish boy. And it was told in such a backward, just the a complete opposite of what was happening. And the father of this boy lives in Chicago, saw the picture, and people started getting together and saying, "We can't let this happen anymore. Such misinformation about Israel." So Honest Reporting was established as a team of editors who monitor the international media, and you're allowed to criticize Israel. Of course you can, and Israel can make mistakes, and you can disagree with Israel's decisions. But there's a line that you cross where you're talking about outright lies and falsehoods and misinformation. So when that happens, we put it out on Twitter, we put it out on Facebook, we try to get the newspaper or the website to take it back and to issue an apology. So that's one big effort that Honest Reporting does. We also work with, there's a few hundred foreign journalists who are stationed in Israel. It's the number 3 country in the world for foreign journalists to be stationed. Obviously, America's number 1, then England, and here. And we work with them to try to tell the story correctly about Israel to begin with. So we do phone conferences with them, tour sites with them, sites, to see the border of Gaza, see the border of Lebanon, see what's happening, see a lot of the amazing things that are happening in Israel, and tell the story of Israel correctly to begin with. So these are sort of the 2 angles that we come at to be able to try to make the case for Israel around the world. So I'm a big part of what Honest Reporting does. I put out articles almost every single day, videos once every few weeks, as we try to share the truth about Israel with the world.
Wow, that's a crazy story. So first of all, let's start with how do people find you? You guys have a website. What's your social media?
If you go to honestreporting.com, very simple, honestreporting.com, you can see the information that's there. If you want to learn from the articles, learn from the videos, if you want to subscribe and get daily news, get all the materials that we put out, you go to honestreporting.com. We also have a Facebook page, Twitter, Honest Reporting, and we use all of that to put out daily. There's daily content that's being put out. A lot of people ask me, how can I become an advocate for Israel? You just have to learn the information. And one of the ways you could do that is through all the resources that we have on the website. You see all the articles, all the videos, the YouTube channel, which is very successful. We're going to reach over 20 million views for our videos just from this year alone, and working very hard on getting those videos out there. I put out a video a few weeks ago. There was a story where there's a football player named Deshaun Jackson who put out on social media quoting Hitler and talking about the Jews, the conspiracy to take over the world.
Yeah, we did an episode on
And
that, so whoever's listening right now, we can jump back to that one.
so you did episode on that. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
So what I actually did in my video is that I praised 4 ESPN anchors who called him out on it and said, you cannot fight for Black Lives Matter and be an anti-Semite. It's all the same battle. It's all the same racism. And I also gave a shout out to Julian Edelman, who's a wide receiver for the New England Patriots, who also put out a beautiful video about it, where he invited Deshaun Jackson to join him in Washington to go to the Holocaust Museum. And then he said, I'll go with you to the African American History Museum. Just sort of, let's parallel the two together. If you're racist against Jews, you can't fight.
I'm writing an op-ed now on that, on Black Lives Matter movement and anti-Semitism. Like, it combats each other. It doesn't make sense.
Right. Absolutely. So I put out this video, and this video has already gone to 400,000 views, because we do it in a way where it certainly piques people's interest. And the goal is get the information out there. And that's what we do. We use all these different mediums to get the information out there. We also host missions in non-corona times in Israel to try to show people, again, the true side of Israel and understand what the media might not be telling you about Israel. So it's a full-time effort, that's for sure. There's always things that are happening, and there's always things that we're anticipating. I put out an article today. The AP Associated Press put out a story about what are the Palestinians going to do now that they feel that the Arab world has forgotten them, because Israel is making this peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates.
Just an idea off the top of my head, they could join the rest of the Arabs in the peace.
Yes. Okay, exactly. And this article basically said, well, they can go back to boycotts, or they might go back to the international court, or they might do.
Right, so then there's that option.
Myself, right. What about all the offers that Israel has made, and why don't they actually own up to that? But I also pointed out that the article ignored the one thing that Palestinian leadership has said it's going to do, which is call for armed struggle, terrorism. Meaning, you can't tell the story and present them as these victimized people who have nothing to do when they're calling for terror, they're calling for armed struggle against Israel. That should be reported as the next part of the story, that while there are some Arab countries that are willing to swallow that there's a Jewish state and make peace, they're not willing to do so. They're continuing to fight. So therefore, I called out the Associated Press reporter because he made it seem like that the Palestinians are just going to continue doing the same thing, and hopefully there'll be a breakthrough. There won't be, because the same thing is not going to work. And they're either going to go to terror, which is horrible, or they'll actually become responsible and try to work towards real peace. So we're constantly monitoring for those kinds of articles, and then try to call out the reporter and the news outlet to make sure they tell the story correctly. Now, are we successful? Are we not? Are we making change? I think that people do know that someone is watching them. That certainly makes a difference. But we can't be silent anyway. We have to be out there fighting against lies and misrepresentation.
That's what we're trying to do with the podcast. We're trying to, me and Moshe, we've told the story of how we started the podcast before. But basically, we were always talking among ourselves, and we realized, we're not getting anywhere with this. We need to have our voices heard by other people, because we're having these conversations between ourselves, but where is that getting us? Where is that getting anyone?
Exactly.
So we made a podcast, and we're trying our best to, get as many listens as possible, to spread the word, to share the truth, to expose anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I was gonna say something along the lines of the whole honest reporting thing is basically the news outlet of this podcast. So what we do in this podcast, you do through news. That's really cool.
It's another form of advocating. It's great.
It's also important, I think, for people to see you guys as people who live in Israel and who you are, because that's also something which is very important for people just to realize who Israelis are. Some of the biggest impact for all the delegations that come here come when people just meet Israeli young people, especially people who are the age of soldiers and serving in various ways. It's critical. So hopefully people will see you guys and see the positive side of Israel as well.
Well, that is us. Thank you. And if any of our listeners wants to meet us, let us know.
Especially our new listeners, which on the topic of the UAE, we've both found this really cool. So we've got new listeners from the United Arab Emirates.
We've gotten some crazy countries. I don't know how it gets there, but if you're
But it gets
listening
there.
in some crazy country, let us know. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
how it gets to these countries. We have in like Pakistan, Mongolia,
That's fantastic.
Indonesia.
It means
Countries
you're
I
doing
can't even
something
pronounce.
right.
Yeah,
Doing our best.
we like to think so.
All right, so tell us more about honest reporting. What's your day-to-day game plan for this? What's like your goal is obviously to share the truth about Israel and expose anti-Semitism and to show the truth behind everything that the news reports false. So what's your like game plan? How do you approach all this?
So on a daily basis, you look to see what's in the news. That's first of all, and you have editors that send over different ideas of things that might require a critique or might need a correction. And then there's also seeing the news of the day and making sure that the story is told correctly, like what really happened behind the scenes, what's really happening. So let's say, election times, to put out how Israeli democracy works. The people should see that side of the story and not just see some anti-Netanyahu story, the way it's often told in the media. Also explain to people, let's say people say that Israel's becoming very right wing. Why is Israel becoming more right wing? It has to do with the whole history that we've had with the Arab neighbors and with the Palestinians and attempts that have been made and failed attempts and terrorism and really get people to see the inside story of Israel's history, but also what Israel's doing today. So on a daily basis, it relates to writing articles, writing scripts for videos, filming the videos, it relates to reaching out to donors, making sure, again, that's a big part of any organization, is making sure that there's sponsorship and people who are behind the efforts as well. And that's what so an average day really involves juggling many different balls at once. And there's many different people in the organization. There's the CEO of the organization. His name is Daniel Pomerantz, who's overseeing everything that's happening. And you have people who are on the financial side, you have people on the editorial side, graphics side, video side, and all of that has to be put together into the symphony with the products that you see coming out every single day. And every day we put out something called Israel Bites, which is a daily news update about what's happening in Israel with all kinds of links. So there are people who rely on this for their daily news, and they know that this is a place they can trust that's going to tell them the truth of what's happening in Israel. So there's all these different elements that are happening at once. You have the social media people as well. So it's a fascinating place to work, and it's also great to be working with people who all care about Israel. By the way, you can have people on the right, on the left, religious and secular, all working together. It's not a question of politics. We're not here. We don't take a political stance. We have interesting discussions in the office about politics, but no one on the official site or in our articles is taking a stance one way or the other. But we are out there to work to get the information right, and there's a passion that everybody has because they're working for a cause which is so positive for Israel and for the Jewish people.
I like how you said that there's no political stance with that. Like it's really good. Like a lot of people, and we say this all the time, and everyone tells it to us all the time, how people just confuse Zionism for politics, and people don't realize that Zionism is not. It's not political. It doesn't have to be. Yes, there is a political side to it. There's politics to it, but it doesn't have to be. It's not just that.
That's my message when I go to college campuses or parliaments. I say you can be left wing and you can even criticize some of the policies that are made by Israel's government, which is more right wing. But let's all agree that Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state. Let's agree that Israel as a whole stands for human rights and for justice and equality. And we're in a complex, very complex conflict with the Palestinians where there's no simple solution in sight. And you want to criticize, you can criticize policies. There's a big difference between that and taking an entire country and saying that it's not legitimate or it has no right to exist. And what going back to my Knesset words before, there are people who are very left wing in the Knesset who are very, very Zionistic. They just have a different approach than might have to some of the issues. And the same thing in honest reporting. You have people from all across the spectrum who are all working together to at least tell the truth about Israel, to make sure that the media is telling the truth about Israel.
One thing has nothing to do with the other. Like when it comes to Zionism and politics, like you said, like there's Knesset members that are left wing and also Zionist. Like that doesn't make a difference. You know, like
But people think it
left wing,
does.
right wing.
Right.
People
But
think it
people
does,
think
and
it does.
that's the we need to clarify that it's not that.
Correct. I'll just end then with one point because I love telling this story. When we decided to move to Israel in 2004, I had to make the most impossible phone call. And that phone call was to my grandmother to tell her that we're making Aliyah. It's a big fear people have Aliyah, who make Aliyah have. You know, you tell your grandparents that you're moving thousands of miles away from them. My grandmother was a Holocaust survivor. Uh, she lived in New York. Here she is in the golden years of her life, enjoying her grandchildren, her great grandchildren, and thank God, great great grandchildren that she lived to see. And here I am, I'm telling her that we're moving to Israel. And I was so afraid. And I finally found the courage. I picked up the phone and I said, Bubby, I have some news for you. God willing, this summer, Dina, myself, the children, we're making Aliyah, we're moving to Israel. And I was prepared for what I somewhat jokingly call the wrath of Bubby. My grandmother is not politically correct. She says what's on her mind. And I was concerned that she was going to really be upset. And there was a pause after I shared the news. And then my grandmother said, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. She made a blessing, thanking God for keeping her alive and bringing us to this day. And I said to her, where did that come from? I wasn't expecting that reaction. She said, it's going to be very hard to have you so far away. I'm not going to see you, your wife Dina, the children. But she said when she was on the boat going to America after the Holocaust, the entire way she was asking herself, why am I on a boat going in this direction to another foreign country, to the Jewish people, when I could be on a boat going the other direction, where a new Jewish state is being born in our biblical and our ancestral homeland? And she said, even though our experience in America, we've been welcomed as a family, as a people, she said, for her to know that her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren are settling in Israel, she has nothing but thanks to God. And I think about that bracha from my grandmother all the time. And then I'll fast forward a bunch of years. My grandmother found the strength to come to Israel, and she visited me in my Knesset office 70 years after her liberation from Auschwitz. And she said to me, Dov, this doesn't make any sense. A Jewish state, Israel, Jewish capital, Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, Jewish parliament, the Knesset, my grandson as a member, doesn't make any sense. And she's right. We are blessed to live in the most incredible of times. We take it for granted. Oh, we have Israel, we have Jerusalem, we have to ask ourselves, what would our great, great, great grandparents have given up to breathe the air of Israel for 5 minutes? Just give me 5 minutes to breathe it. And here we are, we're living here. We're blessed to live in incredible, incredible times. So I wake up every day just so thrilled to be living here with all the challenges that come along with it. And I try to remind myself on a regular basis of the incredible blessing that we have to have Israel, to have Yerushalayim, to have our own army, to be speaking our native language. This is what we have to always remind ourselves. And the challenge for everyone, and you guys are doing this, is to stand up and do something about it. Speak up, share your mind, and be part of what's happening in Israel. For those who are blessed to live in Israel, for those who can't live in Israel, to be advocates for Israel, be supportive of Israel. But it can't be business as usual because we're blessed to live in these incredible, incredible times. So for me, whether it's in the Knesset, whether it's teaching, whether it's honest reporting, just being part of what's happening in Israel. And by the way, if you're in Israel, you could be working in construction or plumbing or as an accountant, as a banker. You're part of what's happening in Israel. And you're part of the future of the Jewish people because this is where our destiny is. So hopefully everyone who's listening and watching can really think to themselves, do some soul searching, and make sure that they can make Israel an integral part of their lives as well.
That's a great message. Great way to end off double
Yeah,
episode.
wow.
And thank you to you guys for what you're doing.
It was amazing having you on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and stay safe and have a great day.